Welcome to Fanko Decodes. I am Fanko. Here are 3 questions to calibrate your moral compass before we begin. First, imagine your fiancé, a man of promise and potential, suddenly looks you in the eye and says, "I don't want a career. I don't want to climb the ladder. I just want to wander." Do you still walk down the aisle? Second, if you sacrifice the love of your life for the safety of a fat bank account, only to discover years later that you could have survived and even thrived on the very pittance you once sneered at, would you have the courage to admit you were wrong? And finally, consider a woman. She has been a nude model, a mistress to many, and a mother to an illegitimate child. Yet she ends her days as a respected socialite, a wealthy wife, and a celebrated painter. Do you view her with contempt as a woman of loose morals? Or do you secretly admire her as someone who figured out the cheat codes to life? Today, we are opening the dossier on Somerset Maugham's masterpiece, The Razor's Edge. This isn't just a novel. It is the coolest experiment on life choices in literary history. Inside this book, there is a woman named Suzanne. She doesn't complain. She doesn't engage in emotional self-destruction. She never looks back. She was dealt a hand of cards so terrible it should have ended her. Yet while everyone else in this story is suffering from their own obsessions, she is the only one who smiles, plays her hand, and wins the pot. Most readers dismiss her as a side character, but I believe she is the apex winner Mom actually wanted us to see. Today, let us tear this book apart and analyze what kind of hardened core is required to become a woman who has truly lived through life. Chapter 1. The Audacity of Loafing. To understand this crisis, we must transport ourselves to a very specific abstract moment in history. The year is 1919. The location is Chicago, a city booming with industry, optimism, and the early roar of the Jazz Age. Imagine this scenario. You have a childhood sweetheart. Let's call him Larry. You are engaged. He has just returned from the Great War in Europe. He is a hero, a pilot, and the world is at his feet. The economy is exploding. Fortunes are being made overnight. And then this young man drops a bomb. He tells you, "I'm not going back to Yale. I'm not taking that stockbroker job. I'm not interested in the hustle." He tells you he plans to live on his inheritance, a mere $3,000 a year. To give you context, in today's economy, that's barely enough to keep the lights on. He says he has no interest in making money and hasn't figured out what he wants to do with his life. His grand plan? To loaf, to wander, to do absolutely nothing of productive value. Now I ask you again, do you marry him? Before you answer with romantic idealism, let's profile the man. Larry is 20 years old, an orphan, a combat veteran. What does he look like? He isn't classically handsome in a Hollywood sense, but he arrests your attention. He is gaunt, appearing younger than his years, with a certain pallor. But his eyes dark, deep, and unervingly calm hold a secret. He is shy, speaks little, yet moves with a natural, unforced elegance. Maugham spends a great deal of time describing Larry's hands. They are beautiful hands, slender, yet possessing a hidden tensile strength. This is the Maugham aesthetic, not necessarily a Greek god, but a man of quiet power, lean, ascetic, and enigmatic. Opposite him is our heroine Isabel, 19 years old, beautiful, plump in that desirable, healthy way, radiating the vitality of a cheerleader or a harvest queen. She is the embodiment of the American dream, healthy, wealthy, and the center of gravity in any room she enters. Isabel's mother is thrilled with the engagement, with one non-negotiable condition. The boy must get a job. It doesn't matter what it is, but he must participate in the economy. Is this an unreasonable request? By the standards of 1919, or even today, absolutely not. It is the baseline requirement for adulthood, but Larry refuses. He spends his days sitting in the public library. When asked, "What is your goal?" He replies, "I don't know." When asked, "What comes next?" he answers with a single terrifying word: loafing. To make matters more complicated, there is a rival, Gray Maturin. Gray is the ultimate catch. He is the son of a millionaire, built like a linebacker, rugged, masculine, and deeply ambitious. He is Larry's polar opposite. And here is the twist. Gray is Larry's best friend. Gray is madly in love with Isabel, but Isabel has kept him in the friend zone, so strategic reserve, while she pledges her heart to the enigmatic Larry. Make no mistake, Isabel truly loves Larry. And Gray? He is a good man. Knowing Larry is unemployed, Gray even asks his incredibly wealthy father to create a high-paying, low-effort job just for Larry. The stage is set. The script is written. All Larry has to do is say, yes, take the job, marry the girl, and live happily ever after in a mansion on Lakeshore Drive. But Larry says no. Why? Why is he behaving like a lunatic? The answer lies in the trenches. During the war, Larry watched his best friend, a man named Patsy, who taught him how to fly, die a gruesome death right in front of him. One minute, Patsy was full of jokes, vitality, and life. The next, he was nothing but biological waste. The suddenness, the absurdity, the finality of that death shattered Larry's worldview. He says something to Isabel that is heavy enough to sink a ship. The dead look so terribly dead when they re-dead. This trauma sparked a fire in his mind. If we can be extinguished like a candle, what is the point of the hustle? What is the point of the dinner parties, the stock market, the social climbing? Larry is asking the ultimate existential questions. But Isabel? She doesn't understand. Or perhaps, more accurately, she refuses to understand. To her, a normal life follows a rigid algorithm. Work, marriage, children, wealth, retirement. To deviate from this is not just eccentric. It is a form of mental illness. The stalemate is absolute. Finally, Larry proposes a compromise. Let me go to Paris for 2 years. Let me think. Let me get this out of my system. If I haven't found the answers by then, I'll come back and take the job. Isabel agrees. Note this carefully. They do not break up. They pause. Isabel is a pragmatist. She is willing to invest 2 years of her youth waiting, gambling that his phase will pass. But she makes a silent vow. She will never, ever marry a loafer. And so, Larry boards a steamer for France, sailing toward the unknown, while Isabel remains in the gilded cage of Chicago. Chapter 2. The Paris Showdown, when spirit crushes matter. Fast forward 2 years. The setting shifts to Paris. This is not a casual vacation. Isabel and her mother have crossed the Atlantic ostensibly to buy clothes. But the subtext is clear. The deadline has arrived. It is time to collect the debt. Isabel is here to demand an answer. Larry comes to their luxury hotel. He has changed. He is thinner, paler, but his eyes burn with a strange, dark intensity. He possesses a tranquility that is almost unnerving. Anyone looking at him can see that he hasn't just been loafing. He has been traveling down a spiritual rabbit hole from which few return. For 2 years, Larry has lived in a freezing garret in the Latin Quarter. He has spent 8 to 10 hours a day reading. He has mastered Latin and Greek. He has attended lectures at the Sorbonne. He has devoured the entirety of French literature. Isabel tries to lure him back with the sensory pleasures of Paris. She takes him to Michelin-starred restaurants, to balls, to the opera. Larry is polite. He participates, but he moves through these spaces like a ghost. He is there, but not there. Desperate to understand the competition, Isabel demands to see where he lives. He takes her to his room. It is near a gasworks. The wallpaper is peeling, the furniture is rickety, and the view is of a soot-stained brick wall. It is the polar opposite of the plush velvet world Isabel inhabits. In this cramped, cold room, filled with stacks of books, the pivotal confrontation of the novel takes place. Isabel looks at the dusty volumes and asks the question every pragmatist asks a philosopher. What is the practical use of all this? Larry's answer is a masterclass in intellectual defense, acquiring knowledge. Isabel, that doesn't sound very practical. Larry, perhaps not, but from another perspective, it is the most practical thing in the world. You cannot imagine the thrill of reading the Odyssey in the original Greek. It makes you feel as if you only have to stand on tiptoe and stretch out your hand to touch the stars. This is the siren song of the intellectual. Larry is glowing. He is drunk on the sublime. But Isabel cuts through the poetry with a serrated knife. When are you coming back to Chicago? Larry delivers the verdict. I'm not going back. I can't go back now. I feel like I'm standing on the threshold of a vast, unexplored country of the spirit. I need to know if God exists. I need to know why there is evil in the world. I need to know if I have a soul that survives death, or if I just rot. Isabel snaps. The gaslighting begins. She says, Larry, people have been asking these questions for thousands of years. There are no answers. Why do you have to be the one to ruin your life looking for them? Larry parries. The fact that they have been asked for thousands of years proves that we cannot help but ask them. The final break happens after a luxurious lunch. Larry, in a moment of pure, naive idealism, asks Isabel to marry him on his terms. He proposes they stay in Paris or travel the world, living on his $3,000 annuity. He says, with genuine excitement, $3,000 converts beautifully into francs. We could live comfortably in the Latin Quarter. We could even afford a maid. He is proposing a bohemian life, a life of the mind. Isabel's response is brutally honest, and for that, we must give her credit. She does not lie. She looks him in the eye and says, I don't want to live on $3,000 a year. I am young. I want to enjoy my life. I want to play golf. I want to ride horses. I want to wear Chanel. Do you have any idea how much it costs to raise a child properly? Isabel is not a villain here. She is a risk manager. She looks at Larry's proposal and sees a bad investment. It's not just the lack of money. It's the lack of ambition. She delivers the killing blow. Larry, if you were working a job and earning $3,000 a year with a prospect of promotion, I would marry you in a heartbeat. Because there would be hope. But you are asking me to sign a contract for stagnation. You are asking me to live small forever, just so you can solve riddles that have no answers. Larry tries to argue that the spiritual life is rich, but to Isabel, that is selfishness. She says, I'm not interested in your soul. I'm a normal girl. I want a normal home. If you loved me, you wouldn't waste time. You'd come home and work, Larry replies. I can't. To do that would be death. It would be selling my soul. And there it is, the impasse. Isabel takes off the engagement ring. She places it on the table. It is a heavy, diamond-encrusted symbol of a contract that has failed. Since we both want things the other cannot give, we cannot be together. They break up. No screaming, no throwing vases. Just a profound, melancholic realization of incompatibility. Isabel is surprised by her own calmness. She loved him. But when she returns to her hotel suite, sinks into the soft upholstery, and looks at the fine porcelain on the mantel, she knows she made the right choice. The memory of Larry's grim, cold room makes her shudder. Later, she confesses something profound to a friend. I know Larry is the hero of this story. He's the idealist chasing rainbows. It sounds romantic, but what about me? Was I destined to be the one scrubbing floors while he has his head in the clouds? If I married him, I would be the only one sacrificing. He gets to chase the infinite. I get the drudgery of budgeting for bread. I don't want that. I just want to live. This Isabel. You can call her shallow. You can call her materialistic. But she is terrifyingly honest with herself. She refused to live a lie. We often conform because conformity offers a safety net. If you fail at a normal life, you still have company. But Larry is gambling his entire existence on a hunch. Isabel looked at that gamble and folded. She realized a painful truth. If Larry loved her enough to give up his quest, he wouldn't be the Larry she loved. And if she gave up her desires to follow him, she would eventually hate him. And so, Larry stays in Paris to wander the earth, and Isabel returns to America to marry the rich, reliable, boring Gray Maturin. Two divergent paths. One towards the spirit, one towards matter. Chapter 3. The crash when fate laughs at your plans. Larry continues his odyssey, working in coal mines, living in monasteries, traveling to India. But let's look at Isabel. 1 year after leaving Larry, she marries Gray. It is the wedding of the century. She has it all: the mansion in Chicago, the servants, the 2 beautiful daughters, the endless stream of cocktail parties and country clubs. It seems she won. She got exactly what she wanted. But history has a wicked sense of humor. The year is 1929. The stock market crashes. The Great Depression begins. Gray's father's company collapses. Gray goes bankrupt. Not just we have to sell the yacht bankrupt, but we owe millions bankrupt. You would expect Isabel, the woman who chose bread over love, to crumble. You'd expect hysterics. You would be wrong. While Gray, the big strong titan of industry, completely falls apart, suffering from debilitating migraines, weeping, suicidal, crushed by the shame of being a provider who cannot provide, Isabel turns into steel. She says, "I have no regrets. I enjoyed the money while we had it. Now it's gone, so we change tactics." This is the first glimpse of her true resilience. She is not just a spoiled brat. She is a survivor. To save money and heal Gray's shattered nerves, Isabel makes a decision. The family will move to Paris to live in her uncle's apartment. Yes, the proud Isabel returns to the scene of her breakup, now relying on the charity of relatives. Years later, when the narrator, Maugham, meets her again in Paris, he is shocked. She hasn't aged from stress. She has blossomed. She is elegant, mature, and manages her diminished household with military precision. And then she says something dripping with irony. Isn't it funny? Our entire family budget right now is exactly what Larry's annuity was back then. About $3,000 a year. Let that sink in. The amount of money she once rejected as death, the amount she said was impossible to live on, is now the very lifeline sustaining her, her invalid husband, and her children. It turns out we don't need as much as we think we do. Isabel proves she isn't just a trophy wife. She nurses Gray like a child. She holds the family together. She admits that while Larry owns her soul, she loves Gray with a fierce protective loyalty. When asked if she regrets not marrying Larry, she replies instantly, "Absolutely not. If I had married Larry, I'd be washing his socks in a tenement while he pondered the meaning of existence. That would be hell. Marrying him would have been madness." She is still trying to convince herself. She has chosen her cage, and she is decorating it beautifully. But now, now, we must introduce the wild card. While Isabel is playing defense, another woman enters the narrative. A woman who plays offense. A woman who makes the moralists clutch their pearls. Enter Suzanne Rouvier. Suzanne is the character who will teach us the most. She comes from the bottom of the barrel. Father dead, mother living on a tiny pension. Suzanne is not a classic beauty. She has a square face, a large mouth, and in her youth, bad skin. She is clumsy, tall, and awkward. Her only assets? A pair of bright, intelligent eyes, a stunning set of white teeth, and a personality that is relentlessly practical. She has no money, no looks, no connections. A hard mode to start. Let's watch how she plays this terrible hand. Phase 1. The launch. At 17, knowing she has no dowry and no marriage prospects in her village, she agrees to run away to Paris with a painter. She becomes his model, his mistress, and his housekeeper. She feels no shame. To her, this is an internship. Phase 2. The pivot. A year later, the painter is broke. Does Suzanne cry? No. She has already scouted the next opportunity, another painter living in the same building. In a legendary move of efficiency, she packs her bags and walks down the hall to the next apartment. She doesn't even need a taxi. The ex-boyfriend even helps her carry the luggage. This is emotional detachment, level 100. Phase 3. The exit. A second painter becomes famous using her as a model. He then dumps her to marry a rich widow. Suzanne's reaction? She understands. She says, "A man has to think of his future. What can I offer him compared to a widow who can fund his exhibitions?" She takes the severance package and leaves. No drama, no victimhood. Phase 4. The pitch. Now experienced, she targets a young, talented artist. She knocks on his door and delivers a sales pitch that would make a Wall Street broker proud. I am 20. I am healthy. I will model for free. I will cook, clean, and scrub this pigsty you call a studio. We pool our resources, you save money. Let's try it. If you don't like it, fire me. She treats the relationship like a strategic alliance. And of course, she closes the deal. Phase 5. The crisis. Later, she falls for a businessman. She wants a child. He refuses. She says, "Fine, I'll handle it." She has a daughter. The businessman eventually leaves her to return to his family. Suzanne is heartbroken. She truly loved him. But watch what she does. She knows a single mother with an illegitimate child is social suicide in Paris. She cannot hunt for a new provider with a baby in tow. So with icy rationality, she sends the child to the countryside to be raised by her mother. She cries. She mourns. She says, "It tore my heart out." But in life, one must be realistic. What good is crying? Does tears buy bread? This woman is a survivor. She is street smart personified. But her greatest stroke of genius and her link to our main story is about to happen. She is about to meet Larry. And through him, she will orchestrate the greatest glow-up in the history of literature. Chapter 4. The Saint and the Sinner, the most rational situationship in history. We need to rewind the timeline slightly to understand the catalyst for Suzanne's ultimate ascent. Her meteoric rise wasn't just luck. It began in her darkest hour when she crossed paths with Larry. Suzanne hit rock bottom. She contracted typhoid fever, a killer in those days. She was languishing in a charity hospital, surrounded by the moans of the dying, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the end. Enter Larry. Larry does something extraordinary. He doesn't just visit. He extracts her. He moves her to a quiet sanatorium in the countryside. But pay attention to the details. Larry does not bring Suzanne's child. Suzanne had already sent the child away. Larry is there to save Suzanne. Now the standard Hollywood script dictates that after a man saves a woman's life, she falls madly in love with him, pledges her eternal devotion, and they ride off into the sunset. But this is Suzanne, and this is Larry. Suzanne does feel a spark. She is grateful. She is vulnerable. She admits later, "I pitied every woman who fell in love with him. I almost did myself. The thought of it terrifies me now. I dodged a bullet." Why? Because she realizes Larry is not a man in the traditional sense. He is more like a monk. He treats her not as a woman to be desired, but as a wounded bird to be mended. In a moment of gratitude, or perhaps a test of reality, Suzanne offers herself to him. The scene that follows is one of the most fascinating anticlimaxes in literature, dripping with psychological tension. Suzanne goes to his room. Larry is lying on the bed, smoking a pipe, reading a book. When he sees her, He simply shifts over to make room. Suzanne recalls. He was sweet. He was affectionate, even tender. He was strong as an ox, yet there was no passion. He made love like a healthy college boy, fulfilling a biological function. And afterwards, I felt like I should be thanking him rather than him thanking me. As I closed the door, I looked back. He had already picked up his book and was reading from exactly where he left off. That image, the man immediately returning to his philosophy book, after intimacy, snaps Suzanne back to reality like a slap in the face. She tells herself, I must never love this man. Women who love him are doomed to unhappiness. I must be careful. A few months later, Suzanne is fully recovered. Her skin is glowing. Her energy returned. Then, Larry does the most Larry thing possible. He stands on the train platform to see her off and says, Well, you're better now. I have to go. Like a doctor discharging a patient, he is done. No tears, no lingering goodbyes. How does Suzanne react? Does she beg? Does she scream? Don't leave me. No, she internalizes the lesson. She thinks, fine, to hell with it. At least I can be grateful for one thing. I didn't let myself fall in love. Armed with a healthy body restored by Larry and a cold, clear head, Suzanne returns to Paris to meet her destiny. Upon her return, a friend introduces her to a new prospect, Achille, a wealthy textile manufacturer from Lille. Suzanne's first question remains consistent. Does he have money? Friend, he is loaded. Suzanne, set up the meeting. Achille is a stereotypical bourgeois industrialist. He is direct. I am married. I have 2 kids, but I come to Paris often. I will set you up in an apartment. I will pay the bills. But I can only see you every 2 weeks for a few days. In her past life among the artists, being a businessman's mistress might have felt like a step down in coolness. But Suzanne looks at the numbers. She smiles. She accepts. It turns out to be the best merger and acquisition deal of her life. Achille is delighted. Suzanne is thrifty. She cooks well. She is low maintenance. And crucially, because she spent years listening to Larry, read classics, and hanging out with painters, she is surprisingly cultured. Achille feels like he is dating an intellectual. It strokes his ego immensely. Now that Suzanne has financial stability and weeks of free time between Achille's visits, she gets a wild idea. I've watched men paint for years. Why can't I do it? This is a profound moment. Most people from the lower classes in this era wouldn't dare touch high art. They would feel unworthy. Suzanne has no such imposter syndrome. She buys supplies. She starts painting. And here is the comedy gold. Achille loves it. He doesn't see it as a distraction. He sees it as a status symbol. My mistress is a painter. It makes him feel like a Medici prince patronizing the arts. Years later, when Mom visits Suzanne, the transformation is complete. She lives in a respectable apartment, painting flowers and landscapes. Mom looks at her art and gives her a piece of advice. Don't try to paint like a man. Paint like a woman. In art, honesty is the only policy. Suzanne listens. She paints pretty, decorative things. They aren't masterpieces, but they are marketable. When Mom asks, "Can you sell these?" Suzanne delivers a line so arrogant, so secure, it belongs in the Hall of Fame. Sell? Why should I sell? I don't need to paint for a living. I have my own income, thanks to Achille. If friends like them, I give them away. Since I don't need money, why should I let art dealers exploit me? Mom is floored. He says, "You are very lucky." Suzanne corrects him instantly. "Not lucky, my dear. Smart. Do you see the brilliance? She didn't marry Larry. That would be madness. She didn't marry a poor artist. That would be foolish. She used Larry for health, used Achille for wealth, and used art for social status. She is playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Chapter 5. The Tragedy of Sophie, the High Cost of Idealism. But we cannot talk about survival without talking about the one who didn't make it. We must speak of Sophie. If Isabel is the pragmatist and Suzanne is the survivor, Sophie is the raw nerve. She is the pure idealist who cannot filter out the horror of the world. We find Sophie in a Paris cafe. But this is not the shy, poetry-loving girl from Chicago anymore. She is drunk. She is high. She is gaunt. Her makeup is smeared, and her eyes carry a terrifying, reckless despair. Isabel explains what happened. Sophie had a perfect life. A handsome husband, a baby, a home. Then, a car crash took them both in an instant. Sophie didn't just grieve. She shattered. She reasoned that if a benevolent God allows such cruelty, then morality is a joke. She dove into the abyss: alcohol, opium, promiscuity, anything to numb the pain. Gray feels pity. But Isabel? Isabel is cold as ice. A normal person recovers from tragedy, Isabel says, sipping her tea. Other women lose husbands. That's no excuse to become a whore. She lives like this because she likes it. This is the dark side of resilience. People who are strong often lack empathy for those who break. Larry, however, sees something else. He delivers a monologue that silences the table. I remember her at 14. She was noble. She read poetry. She could smell the earth after rain... She has a beautiful soul. I don't care where she has been or what she has done. That soul is still there. Isabel trembles. She realizes Larry has never looked at her with that kind of spiritual admiration. She is jealous. Then comes the bombshell. Larry announces he is going to marry Sophie. Isabel explodes. I didn't sacrifice my love just to see you throw your life away on a drug addict. Larry believes he can save Sophie. He believes marriage will give her the stability to get clean. And miraculously, it starts to work. Sophie stops drinking. She fights the withdrawals. She begins to look human again. Isabel is terrified. If Larry succeeds, she loses her moral victory. And so, we arrive at the most chilling scene in the book. Isabel invites Sophie to her apartment for a wedding fitting. When Sophie arrives, she is trembling, fragile, fighting every second to stay sober. Isabel says, "Oh, darling, I have to run an errand. Wait here." She leaves Sophie alone in the living room. And there, placed deliberately, conspicuously on the table, is a bottle. Not just any alcohol. It is Zubrovka, a Polish bison grass vodka. It is Sophie's favorite. The specific smell, the specific taste, it is her kryptonite. Isabel knew this. It is a premeditated assassination of the soul. Sophie sits there. The clock ticks. The smell of the bison grass fills the room. The demon on her shoulder screams. She fights, but she is alone. When Isabel returns, Sophie is gone, and the bottle is half empty. Sophie runs away. She feels she has failed Larry, that she is unworthy of salvation. She dives back into the underworld. She finds a violent sailor who beats her. When warned that the man might slit her throat one day, Sophie replies, "That would be the best thing that could happen to me." And eventually, it happens. Sophie is murdered in a cheap hotel in Toulon. When Mom goes to identify the body and collect her effects, he finds a sordid, filthy room. But among her meager possessions, crime novels, and drug paraphernalia, is one book. It is a volume of poetry by Rimbaud. Even in the gutter, even with a needle in her arm, the part of her that loved beauty, the part Larry saw, was still holding on. Sophie's death is the final severance for Larry. He gives away his inheritance. He decides to return to America, not to be a tycoon, but to be a taxi driver or a mechanic, to live anonymously among the people, a saint in blue jeans. Chapter 6. Suzanne's ultimate checkmate. While Sophie dies and Larry vanishes into obscurity, Suzanne plays her final card. Aquilah's wife dies. Now, Suzanne knows marriage is a trap for a free spirit. But she also knows that wife of a wealthy industrialist is a better title than mistress. She views marriage not as a romance, but as a career move she accepts. And she manages her husband like a CEO manages a difficult stakeholder. There is a delightful detail in the book where Suzanne manipulates Achille to keep him faithful. She tells him, "Achille, you are so handsome, so virile. Women find you irresistible. I simply cannot let you go to Paris alone. You must stay here where I can protect you from temptation." Achille, flattered by the idea that he is a sex symbol, happily agrees to stay home. Suzanne tells Mom, "If men weren't so incredibly vain, life would be very difficult for us poor women." But the coup de grace is her art career. How do you turn a mediocre painter into a celebrated artist? Marketing. Achille uses his connections. He invites the Minister of Fine Arts to dinner. He charms the critics. He maneuvers to get one of Suzanne's paintings acquired by a national museum. Suddenly, Suzanne isn't just a rich wife. She is a serious artist. In the final scene with her, Mom buys one of her paintings out of politeness. Suzanne beams. "You are an angel. This is the first painting I've ever sold." She is oblivious to his charity. She looks at her own mediocre work and says, "It is charming, isn't it? There is no denying the talent." This is Suzanne. Confidence unshakable. Narrative controlled. She ends the story as a wealthy, respected, happily married woman who believes she is a genius. She broke every rule of the good girl playbook, and she won the game. Final chapter. The misunderstood definition of success. The story concludes with everyone getting what they wanted. Isabel got her social position at the cost of love. Larry got his spiritual answers at the cost of a normal life. Sophie got her oblivion at the cost of her life. And Suzanne? She got everything, and she paid almost nothing. Why did the bad woman win? Because while everyone else was fighting against reality, Suzanne surfed it. Larry fought against materialism. Isabel fought against poverty. Sophie fought against pain. Suzanne accepted whatever wave came her way and rode it. When she was poor, she worked. When she was sick, she let herself be healed. When she was a mistress, she saved money. When she was a wife, she built a reputation. This is the concept I want you to take away. Radical adaptability. We are often taught to be good, to be like Isabel, follow the rules of society, or to be like Sophie, hold onto our ideals until they crush us. But the world is chaotic. It is unfair. It throws typhoid and stock market crashes and grief at us without warning. Suzanne teaches us that sometimes you have to be a little bit bad. You have to be selfish enough to prioritize your survival. You have to be thick-skinned enough to ignore the judgment of others. You have to be pragmatic enough to spot an opportunity in a disaster. Isabel was a prisoner of her image. Sophie was a prisoner of her guilt. Suzanne was free because she didn't care about the script. She wrote her own. The razor's edge isn't telling you to be immoral. It is telling you that agency is the most valuable currency you have. When you stop trying to be the perfect woman or the good person that society demands and start focusing on simply navigating the storm with your eyes open, that is when you truly start to live. Suzanne didn't just survive. She thrived because she refused to be a victim of her circumstances. This is Fanko Decodes. If you found value in this deep dive into the darker mechanics of survival, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs a reality check. Until next time, keep your eyes open and play the hand you're dealt.